Hello and welcome. This is Lights Out, and away we go with the episode. With the Formula One podcast for fans and by fans. I'm Will, and as I look across the digital garage, as always, I'm joined by my co-driver, or shall I say my co-host Sam. Howdy, Sam. How are you?
Howdy, Will. Howdy, partners. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm all very good. I thought you'd enjoy that Austin-themed intro for you for racing Austin this weekend.
I have. So, as you will well know, I didn't manage to watch the Grand Prix this weekend on account of being away on holiday. But I did follow on Twitter and look at all of the text-related stuff was just great. Like the outfits and things. I think like Valtteri Bottas in particular, he went to town.
Yeah.
Ricardo, as always, did as well.
Did.
Very good.
Joe as well had a cowboy-themed helmet as well, which was very good. I think Charles Leclerc had American football one as well. I thought it was good.
Yeah, very good. They really get into it, don't they? I like it.
Yeah. Did you have a good time off in Brussels in Belgium?
I did, yeah, it was very nice, yeah. So I went to Ghent, Bruges and Brussels. Ghent and Bruges were both lovely. Brussels was okay. I would say go back in like maybe 10, 15 years when all the buildings finished, because they're building lots of stuff.
Right.
But for the moment, yeah, I think Ghent and Bruges were the outstanding places we went to. Both very nice, highly recommend.
Very good.
And yes, I spent a lot of the weekend drinking quite a lot of Belgian beer and feeling quite sorry for myself about that on Monday.
Oh.
Yeah, very nice.
Well done. That sounds like a trip well done.
Yeah, how was yours? How was the race?
Race wasn't a classic. I think we go down as quite a forgettable Grand Prix. We're obviously in that weird part of the season now where the championship is basically, Max has won the World Championship, the Constructors won. There's a few interesting battles, but it's kind of, I definitely really get the sense at the moment in Formula One, it's very much getting ready for 2024 because the regulations are minor tweaks. A lot of people are really focused on that. And that's actually quite interesting because usually this period of the season gets killed off quite quickly and there's no real interest. But we're seeing the upgrades, and a lot of people brought upgrades to Austin because it's such a good track to test at. And I'm sure we'll come on to this later. That I think we've made it quite interesting. There's some interesting developments in performance. But yes, yeah. I can answer my own question now. The winner of the race was the fastest driver in the fastest car, and it was Max Verstappen again, who won the sprint as well. Came from sixth to first. Mm-hmm. You've been catching up on the coverage, and you've watched the highlights. What your assessment of Max's win? What do you pick up from what you've seen?
So from what I can tell, the gap has definitely narrowed between Red Bull and Mercedes and McLaren.
Yep.
Last time out, we saw McLaren get pretty close with Norris. We obviously saw Piastri win a sprint, hooray, etc. I'm still dining out on that one. Very much enjoyed. And then obviously in the race this time round, and all weekend, to be honest, like I did follow practices and follow qualifying and stuff while I was away. And I know Kota is a track that Lewis loves, and I did fancy him to challenge, not necessarily win, but to challenge, and that's kind of what happened. So I think there's definitely hope for the future. That we will see closer fights for wins before the end of this season, and we'll probably see. I do think we'll see someone else win a race. I mean, I've predicted Lewis to win Brazil all season long. I think that will still happen. And yeah, it looks a lot closer, but it's still Max Verstappen. He drove the race with, as far as I could tell, broken brakes, which is kind of a fundamental part of a Formula One car, and still managed to sort of comfortably maintain a gap, make a nice pass on Norris, and win a race. So I think it's definitely closer. How close they are is another question. But yeah, it still looks like Max, Red Bull, dominant package, going to be tough to beat for the foreseeable.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most stressed we've seen Max in the lead of a race. I mean, because we've seen the full spectrum, right? We've seen him completely chilled, nothing to worry about. Drive onto the sunset, and that's it, job done from P1. Or even when he's come from behind, he's made that pretty routine. Whereas he definitely seemed pretty under pressure and pretty stressed. And I think that was probably a combination of two things. The brake issue wasn't particularly helpful. And I think GP, his engineer, trying to message it, or sort of speaking on the radio as he was braking and trying to focus, really, really wound him up. And that happened several times. Yeah. And then I think there's a little bit of psychology in the fact he knew that Lewis was hunting him down, and he was obviously not in a faultless machine. I think that kind of got to him a bit as well. And it did look like Lewis maybe could have done it, especially the penultimate lap. It was still, I think, going into the final lap, penultimate lap, it was about a 3-second gap. And by the end of that lap, it was down to just over 1. And so, that raised the question of could he do it in a lap? But I think Max actually got quite lucky by catching a back marker and getting their DRS. So, I think you're right on the assessment. Everyone's getting closer, and I think as well. I think we'll see someone else win a race, and hopefully it is Lewis. And it was a shame he couldn't do that. We'll come on to Lewis's race in a little bit. But yeah, I kind of hope that this is not going to be like we're going to get to the end of this season and we're going to have other people winning the races and real fights for the lead. We get to Bahrain, first race of 2024, and we're back to where we were at the start of this season. I feel that would be a real shame if that development was kind of the might of Adrian Newey could pull up a massive gap again.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think where things are getting better, and it's definitely more interesting when you're watching a race and the lead is changing, because at one point Max was leading, one point Lando was leading, another moment Lewis was leading. So it definitely felt like a real sort of battle and for that, and it was just a shame really that Lewis couldn't do that. I mean, one thing we should touch on, and at the end of the race, Max on his podium with his KISS activated trophy, which I'm still.
They did another one of those, did they?
Yeah, they brought those out again,
God.
which I'm still not convinced by. But also, the only person that knew how to make it work was Max, and Lewis just did his classic lift the trophy up and point to everyone in front of him. So they didn't even get to use it. But it was interesting when he received the trophy. There was lots of booing, and that's kind of been interpreted three different ways. I think people maybe booing because bored of him winning again, which I don't know. I feel like that's kind of, we saw that in Miami, but we've not really seen that since, and I think that's kind of, I'm not quite sure about that. Then there were a lot of Mexico fans and a lot of Checo fans there, so people saying they're booing for him. And then I saw else on Twitter that the local governor who handed him the award is actually really unpopular there, so maybe people might be booing that.
Yeah, Greg Abbott.
Yeah, that seems very political, but then it kind of like, it's obviously you can't just boo someone's name, but yeah, a bit of a strange one. It was quite surreal to see actually the winner of the race be booed. So it was very, very loud booing when Max collected the trophy, and then obviously it changed quite quickly when Lewis got his, because he's obviously so popular as well. I suppose we should come on to Lewis's race. What did you see from the highlights, and what's your sort of assessment as you've seen the fallout as well, especially with the disqualification, which we can cover now as well?
Yeah, well,
what do you make of Lewis's race?
We'll put the disqualification to the side for the moment, as Lewis kind of has done since that decision was made, and he's done all of his press stuff. I think it was a really strong weekend for him. He looked really on it. I think it was another demonstration that I think he genuinely probably is the only driver that can challenge Max over a season. I don't think there's anyone else on the grid who could do that.
Yeah.
Over the course of a full season. He's just so good at so many circuits, and this is one where he is particularly good, and he likes it a lot, which is great. And he had the edge on George all weekend. I don't think George particularly likes Cota very much.
No.
I mean, you sent something to me, didn't you, last week about the mean speed distance, the mean speed difference between drivers in teams, and I think the mean difference between Lewis and George all season has been about a tenth and a half, 2 tenths, give or take. So he's definitely still got the advantage on George Russell, which is good, I suppose, for him from a longevity perspective. Less good for George. Things for him to think about in the winter, probably. But yeah, it just looks a really strong performance, and I think if Mercedes had been a bit sharper on the strategic front, and I think even if the pit stops had been a bit better, I mean, I don't feel like Mercedes. I think Mercedes are a bit conservative on their pit stops. I can understand why, because going for those really fast kind of sub 3 second or sub 2.5 second pit stops does come with risk, and maybe in their minds, they would rather have an absolutely solid, never going to fail 3 second stop over a 2.5 second stop that might sometimes fail. But in situations like this, where the margins are so fine, that does make quite a big difference. And I feel like Red Bull as well, like they are regularly the quickest pit crew. McLaren obviously now hold the record for the fastest pit stop in Formula One ever. Yeah, I think it's probably something for Mercedes to think about, whether or not there's a gain to be made there, because I think there is personally. I've thought it for a while, to be honest with you, even like going back a year or so. Like there were pit stops for both George and Lewis where I thought like it wasn't as quick as a lot of their rivals, and at some point it was going to cost them. And I think this is an example where you could probably say it certainly cost them, if not the win, then it could well have cost them the opportunity for a win. But yeah, generally Lewis seems very upbeat. The upgrades worked. They've bought a new floor, which they've been saying, Andrew Shoflin's been saying for ages, is going to be a real clue into like what direction they go in for next year. And clearly this is a good direction because the car's improved quite a bit. And yeah, on another day, Lewis probably stands at the top of the podium and has another win, and we're all getting very excited. Well, we would be getting very excited, bar the disqualification that's now since happened. And yeah, generally pretty good weekend. Seems like they're moving in the right direction. He seems much happier. Yeah, I genuinely, honestly, the only situation I think we're going to have a close title fight next year is if Lewis and Mercedes put together a package to challenge Max and Red Bull. I just don't see another combination challenging Max over a season. So we kind of needed this, I think, as a fan base.
Yeah, well, like I said at the start, it's definitely clear that everyone's in that race for 2024 now, and it's clear it's very clever of Mercedes to be using every upgrade to really assess where they're going. And I think you're right. I think I saw comments from Lewis saying this was the happiest he's felt in the car, and he had felt real confidence in the car in the corners, which is something he's really struggled with, the W13 and this with the early version of this car as well. So it's good that they seem to have got their development on track. And yeah, I'm a bit concerned as well by two things that sort of happened with Lewis. The pit stops as well. Both his stops were 3.6 and 3.4, whereas George's were just slightly just below 3 seconds. But if I think that's still way too high, and it's crazy you saying 3.6 seconds is too high. But I think you're right. I think they need to be consistently below 3 seconds or closer to 2.5 seconds, because they do add up, and it was a fine margin strategy that they had, and that those slow stops obviously made it tougher for Lewis coming out on that final stint, increasing his gap. But also, I thought the strategy just didn't. We've said this a couple of times recently, but the strategy has not been good from Mercedes. It's been a bit hesitant or a bit reactive, and it went on commentary. It sounded like they thought they were going to go for a one stop, and then they brought him in and they kind of changed it around, but he kind of lost the advantage of that first stint of staying out because the others just closed that gap. So he then lost space, and he was pretty miffed on the radio, saying, you've left me too big of a gap. And I agree with him. I think if they'd called him in maybe a lap or two earlier on some of those stints, that could have made a massive difference to the fight at the end. And we'll come on to the disqualification in a second, but he would have been I think he would have been in a much stronger position. And I think he needs to go back and sort of have those questions, but like, well, what went on with that strategy? You gave me with too much work to do, because there could have been a situation where as he gets right behind Max, but his tires are completely gone, and he's on the mediums and Max is on the hards, and Max is fine defending because he's had to cook his tires getting there. I think that's a concern. And there's a guy I follow on Twitter. I think it's called like F1 Jordan. He's a massive Mercedes fan. He's very, very vocal about Abu Dhabi 2021, but he's been recently turned very critical of Mercedes itself and saying, like, what is going on with their race side operation? The fact to have such poor strategy and poor pit stops, like something must be going wrong. Like Toto needs to look at it and fix it. And you kind of think he's kind of got a point, really, because if this was the World Championship battle and you needed to win the race, your strategy and your pit stops have not helped your driver. They've made things worse for your driver. And that's not something we saw in 2021. We saw them very much in close knit, whereas with Red Bull, we've seen them, be almost seamless, and there's been never issues from that. So, I don't know. I think that's something to look at, and hopefully that's something they'll be looking at in Mercedes to prepare for 2024, because you can't have your pit crew or your strategy team letting you down.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the strategy decisions are just a bit. It's probably symptomatic of 8 years of dominance. I think they're just a bit small C conservative sometimes with how they do their strategies.
Do you think they got complacent?
I don't know about. Well, maybe over the course of that 8 years, a bit potentially, because the gap they built, particularly like thinking about what it was like in 2020 and that absolute rocket ship they built. Like the gaps were so big, they probably could get away with having a pit stop that was like 5 seconds long if they wanted to and still win the race. So maybe there's a bit of that. I don't think it's not been like that for a couple of years now in terms of their dominance. So you would have hoped that the kind of the drive to win, I suppose, or get back to winning again would have been enough to have seen that progress. But yeah, it does seem that there's little bits of Mercedes operations that I think definitely need a bit of a kick during the winter. I think the pit stops is definitely one. I agree with you about the strategy. I think they just need to be a bit more decisive and on occasion a bit bolder. I actually thought in Singapore that was a really good kind of situation where they made a bold strategy call quickly and delivered it well. Now, obviously, what happened afterwards wasn't brilliant with Russell and crashing out and the rest of it, just because of an error. But at least it put them in a operating window where they could potentially have won the race, and that's all you can ask for in that situation. Whereas in this case, there was a genuine chance for Lewis to finish ahead of Max on the road, and I think it wasn't Lewis. Let's put it this way: it wasn't Lewis's fault that didn't happen, because I think with a better strategy call and with better pit stops, he probably catches Max and overtakes him, which would have been amazing for the sport. I mean, I do think the sport desperately needs it, based on what we've seen this season. So yeah, there's some food for thought there for Mercedes and for Toto Wolff for sure. I think there'll be lots of people having a look at themselves in the winter. I just don't think their lead driver is going to be one of them. I think Lewis will probably look back on this year as an extremely solid performing season for him, really, and bar a disqualification, which has deeply annoyed me, as we'll come to, I'm sure. I think he'd be finishing second in the championship ahead of Checo. So
I mean, he could still do it. He's still got 4 races left now?
I think it's 4, isn't it? It's 4 or
Mexico,
5.
It's 4. Mexico, Vegas, Abu Dhabi, and Brazil. Yeah, so I think it's 4.
Maybe. It feels like the gap's too big now. When I went to sleep on Sunday, the gap was down to 19 points, and I thought, well, Lewis is going to finish second in the championship now. That's a doddle. Yeah. I don't feel that confident anymore because he's obviously lost that second place. But
Before we come on to the disqualification, because I think this is going to bring us into Latifi territory. I think the one thing I thought was very interesting was I think I sent this to you on Twitter. There is a comparison clip of Lando's defending moves against Max and then against Lewis. Max, he kind of moves very far over to the track and gives Max quite a free, easy run. And then with Lewis, he does something very bizarre, very, very late, kind of swerves and does something quite dramatic, which I think an inexperienced driver could get caught by Lando sort of doing that. Whereas Lewis was very clever, just sort of hang a bit further back, and then he just knew he had the grip going out of the first corner and could take him. Yeah. I thought it was interesting how he took such different moves in identical scenarios and situations. It wasn't like he had the tyres to fight Lewis, because he didn't have the tyres to fight Lewis. So why take such an aggressive and weird defending move? And Toto, there was a really good camera on Toto afterwards. He kind of shook his head, but had kind of like a smile on his face, just like, you're going to need to try better than that if you're going to try the dramatics on Lewis. But why do you think he did those two very different moves? Do you think he had more respect for Max and thought, I'll let him go through because that's not really my vibe. But actually, against Lewis, I've got to prove myself and that rivalry. I don't know. What's your assessment?
I don't know. So there's quite a few factors at play there. So I think the two non-Lando related ones are Max Verstappen still feels quite inevitable, and Lewis has been driving a Mercedes that hasn't been challenging for wins or dominant at all this year. And maybe Lando saw that as a kind of, this is my fight, rather than the fight with Max Verstappen, perhaps. The other one is, I mean, the Max one happened first, right? So it's quite possible Lando thought, I'm going to try this way of defending, give Max lots of space, try and cut back and try and take him again through 1 and 2 before they get to the S's. He tried that. It didn't quite work out. It may well have been that when it came to Lewis, he'd sort of learned from that first situation and thought, I can't let that happen again, because it ended up being quite an easy pass for Max, so I better do something different. And maybe that's why. Now, I don't know, maybe there's a psychological kind of thing in there. He's obviously racing against Lewis Hamilton. Some people do race him differently for what, for love or money. I don't know why, but some of them do. And maybe there's a bit of that. And I know he has a really good relationship with Max, and there's probably a greater willingness to race cleanly with him than there is Lewis potentially. But I don't know. There's too many factors at play to really put your finger on which one it is. If you're asking me which one I'd bet on, I'd say it's probably a combination of the first two, rather than Lando just like totally disrespecting Lewis and thinking I'd rather take him out of the race than give them cough up second, because McLaren is still chasing fourth, or have now chased down fourth in the championship. There's a lot of points to play for. If he takes Lewis out and takes himself out in the process, I don't think anybody's happy at all. He'd be his own worst enemy for doing that. So I think it's personally probably a combination of columns A and B, but I can understand why, like, Lewis fans in particular looked at it and thought, why are you racing him like that in comparison to Max? Because it doesn't look great, but I think situationally there might be reasons for it. Giving Lando the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, as the diehard Lewis fan of the two of us, I'm glad you provide a bit more balance rather than it's all just so tearing into Lando. Let's come on to disqualification then, because I think we've
Yeah.
covered off the battle for the win. All I'll say first, it was crushing waking up on Monday morning and seeing the disqualification, because it happened quite a bit after the race, especially the race was held quite late as well. I mean, I'm just glad he didn't win the race, because I think I would have been even more deflated by it. But you caught all of this from following the race and having seen the result as well. What are your thoughts on the disqualification?
Not great. So rules are rules. Fine. No problem with that. But what I don't like is that the process they follow is so clearly flawed, and everybody can see it's flawed. So they do spot checks on cars. They do dip samples. They don't check them all at all, and that's fine. But they have the option to if they want to, within the rules, I believe. So they check the 4 cars, 2 of which were Lewis and Charles. Both of those 2 cars have worn down their planks. Now, listener, if you really want a boring explanation about this, but essentially planks are what they used to be wood. They're not anymore. They're kind of polymer titanium type planks that sit on the bottom of the cars, and they're basically measured at the end of the race, or sometimes measured at the end of the race, to make sure that the car's setup isn't too low, so the cars aren't super low to the ground. If they get worn down loads, the planks are worn down too much, a car can be disqualified because they deem it unsafe, right? Because the car's been running too closely to the surface of the track. Now, in this case, Cota's extremely bumpy. They had 1 session to set up the cars because it was a sprint weekend. We should probably talk about how the fact that it was a sprint weekend and it was pretty rubbish, as far as I can tell. Now, I get all the teams are working in the same parameters and everybody else has the same amount of time to set up a car as well. But it does seem to me to be a little bit unreasonable for there to be no leeway whatsoever on this particular bit of rule, given those 2 factors I've just mentioned, the fact that they only had one session to set the cars up. I also really don't like that upon finding out that 50% of the cars they've looked at have worn their planks down too much, they didn't check anybody else, because it's a 50. It's clearly like, from the sample they've got, 50% of the cars have worn their planks down too much, and there are probably loads of other cars who have scored lots of points, by the way, who've probably also worn down their planks too and are getting away with it. Basically, I think there should be there should be something that allows the FIA to go in and check everybody else once they've checked those cars, those 4, and established that there was clearly an issue at that particular race. I don't doubt there are certain teams that didn't have an issue with it. Red Bull can run their car quite high because they've got such a fantastic design that drives so much downforce. I doubt they have a problem, but there were lots of others that I would be absolutely shocked at if they didn't have the same issue that Lewis and Charles did, but got away with it because they happen not to be the ones that were checked. And it just doesn't seem super fair. And it's just such a disappointing way to end a race. And I think the other thing as well is, like, historically, when things like this have been done and decided, there is an opportunity for teams to go in and make their case and protest. They weren't afforded that because they took too long. The FIA took ages to check the cars. When they finally got around to it, the window in which teams could offer a defence is gone. They get like 30 minutes after the race is finished, apparently. So there's no way to protest it or even have a conversation about whether this was right or not. And yeah, so the whole process just feels a bit stupid. So I have awarded the FIA my Latifi this week, not just for that. There are a couple of other reasons, which I'll go into in a minute. But before that, what did you make of the plank gate?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's if you've got 2 of the 4, then that should mandate you go and check all the cars or all the point scorers. And if then you find 90% of the grid has got it, then you maybe need to assess, okay, in this scenario, is disqualification the right thing? Because you can't disqualify 18 cars for something, or 17 cars, whatever. So it was just a bit of a shame, really. And like the thing is, right, for track limits, that's a 5-second penalty. Whereas for this, like, it's something that we couldn't even see, we didn't even know about until the end of the race. Something underneath the car, disqualification. And it's not like we're driving around with like something really unsafe on the car. I know why they put it in place, but disqualification feels like a very, very harsh penalty for this as well. So maybe they need to reassess that as well. But yeah, I think it's disappointing, and it's again another example of the FIA and their rules, which they really, really need to go and have a look through them and just sense check them, because it's just not good for the sport to have something to be decided so late after the race. It was hours after the race where you find the number 2 driver on the podium has been disqualified, and another driver has been disqualified as well. And the fact it was only 2 of 4 is just, like I say, they need to go and do everyone. So I think that's a very, very well deserved Latifi in that alone. And I'm keen to hear your other reasons for why they've earned a Latifi this week.
So you've just mentioned the other one, one of the other ones, track limits.
Yeah,
it's just driving. It's so boring. I'm so sick of it.
They need. I was thinking the exact same thing. They need to sort it out. They need to change the ruling because it's boring. It's not an interesting thing to follow as a fan because you can't clearly see. Sometimes it's a small margin of going over a white line.
Yeah,
and you can't see that. It doesn't look clear and obvious. So
I just it won't be long before we're back in Austria again. I'm sure we'll be having a very similar conversation yet again. I just don't. The white line rule is just so stupid. Like, they need to find another way to keep the drivers on the circuit. Clearly, you and I think, both agree that they should just stop having enormous runoff areas at every bloody race on the circuit, on the calendar, and just start putting gravel and grass in, because that is more than enough of an incentive to keep the cars on the track, right? You don't need a massive runoff area. There are some tracks, yes, okay, fine. You probably need a bit of a runoff area where it's deemed particularly dangerous, but that runoff area doesn't have to be anything other than grass if you don't want it to be. And there's nothing unsafe about gravel either, by the way. From what we've seen so far, gravel slows down cars just as much as the runoff areas do. Yeah, they need to look at that. And then the other one, it's Lewis related, actually. It's the track crossing stuff that happened way last week, way before the race started. But the FIA decided, and the stewards decided, that they would re-review the fact that Lewis crossed the circuit after his incident at where were we? Remind me. Qatar, that's right. Where he was out of the race early doors. And they basically put out some press statements saying that they were reopening it because he was seen as a role model or something, because of his status as a role model. They had to look at it again. I was just like, oh my God, really? Talk about singling out a guy because he's well liked. How stupid is, what stupid reason to look at anything like that? Never mind the safety or anything like it. And also, we've seen so many other drivers do it this season, last season. I mean, I remember Max doing it. Yeah, exactly. So it's very, very irritating. And I don't know. I don't like conspiracy theories, but I did think it was interesting that it happened the same week that a certain steward, who we know has definitely has a certain issue with Lewis, was put on the panel. So yes, I do wonder if there's something going on there. But yeah, that the track limit stuff, and then the plank gate shenanigans after the race on Sunday, and how it's all handled, and the processes they employ to do things, it just sucks so much of the joy out of the sport. I'm just so done with it. Yeah, they need to go and do something else.
Yeah. Well, how many times we'll tot up at the end of the season, but we've given numerous Latifis to the FIA for so many botched and bad decisions and just poor rules that they've got in place, and just poor running and oversight of the sport. And it's, that if that's a common theme in a jovial Formula One podcast, I'm sure those in F1 HQ will be having similar thoughts as well, saying, yeah, we need to sort out the FIA because they're kind of ruining our sport here. Yeah. One benefit of the Plankgate was Carlos Sainz, who's had quite an impressive record this weekend, where he managed to get his third P3 from not finishing the actual race in P3 from disqualifications afterwards. I quite like that he's had 3 P3s and he's always got them a long time after the race from other people being disqualified, or getting penalties. So I did enjoy that. The reason why I wanted to mention Ferrari is, I wanted to give them my Latifi, particularly to their strategy team, because, just you would, if you watched the race, you would not think that Charles started on pole.
Yeah,
he was nowhere at all in the conversation for the lead. When Lando overtook him at the start, there was no fight back at all, and then he just went backwards and backwards. Again, they went for a one stop, which no one else did for Charles. And I think it was must have been 10, 15 laps to go. His hopeless engineer goes on the radio to him and says, "Oh, we're thinking about moving to Plan D." And he's like, "What do you mean Plan D?" He's like, "Oh, coming for a stop." It's like, no. If we come in for a stop now, I'll be really, really far back because I don't have the laps to regain it. Again, just a shocker of a strategy. The fact that they were the only ones doing it, and the ones that, as the race was unfolding, thought, "Oh, hang on, we should still stick to this." They couldn't see what was unfolding in front of their eyes. Yeah. And I did see that him and Max have switched places. So Max, well, until the disqualification, Max started 6th, finished 1st, and he obviously finished 6th until his disqualification. I saw this really fascinating stat on Twitter. Max has 9 more pole positions than Charles, but 45 more victories.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah,
that's quite a deficit, isn't it?
That's quite crushing for someone as quick as Charles. But yeah, just a poor weekend for Ferrari. So I thought good just to give that recognition for their shocking strategy and their stupid one stop.
I'm kind of annoyed. I'm kind of annoyed for Charles to be honest, because he did have a really good weekend. It looks like they've got the car into a place where it's set up a bit more favourably for him. He likes quite a loose rear end, let's say, similar to how Max drives. Actually, he's quite aggressive in the corners and stuff, whereas Sainz is a bit more of a smooth operator, as we know.
I enjoyed that impression.
I can't do it at all. Yeah, the strategy call, it's just weird when you look at it in the if you just zoom out a little bit and look at it as a strategy call. So first of all, they're at COTA, right? Bear in mind, this generation of cars are massive, as we've talked about many times. The tyres get chewed up quite quickly. There are very few circuits where a one-stop's viable. COTA has never been one, right? Even with the old generation of cars, it's never been one, first, point one. Ferrari, what's it known for? What's it done all season long?
It's tyre degradation.
It's chewed its tyres. Yeah, and what is Charles Leclerc not known for? Tyre management.
Yeah.
And I just like, the mind boggles at whoever thought, oh yes, a one stop for this in this situation sounds ideal. Let's do that as plan A. And yeah, I mean, the fact that Lewis, who is very well known for his time management, driving a Mercedes that's very good on its tyres, thought about a one stop for a bit and then decided within a few laps, no, bad idea, let's not do that. Tells you all you need to know that Ferrari should never have even been entertaining that as a possibility before the race, never mind implementing it as plan A. So yeah, I can understand why Charles a bit annoyed. There was a bit of chat about, why doesn't Charles argue about his strategy more than like Carlos does when he's on the radio. He just says, no, I'm doing this. But he trusts, he has an inherent trust of his team. And I think the problem is that trust is very, very quickly being eroded, much like the tyres.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, just how many more times is it going to happen before he's just like, nah, I'm done. I'm done with this now. I'm going to go somewhere else.
I mean, there are rumours that he's going to sign a new contract, which is yet to materialise. I've been hearing this for a while, but again, you're going to come away from that weekend going, this is another weekend where I don't trust the team to make good decisions.
Yeah.
And it was the team that made those decisions.
Yeah.
And that's been a theme. We've not had as many memes this year of the Ferrari strategy unit, but for the last couple of seasons, they were a frequent throughout the season of so many times you'd see the clown meme of them on the pit wall. Yeah, not a good one for Ferrari. I mean, still crazy that they still won a race. They might be end the season as the only other team to win a race. Yet, if you look at the current list of where they are in the top teams in on pace, then I'd still pick the Merc and the McLaren as a better car overall than that one. But yeah, it's very very interesting. Let's quickly cover Aston. Did you see about their upgrades?
I only saw that they were running 2 different cars effectively.
Well, yes, they
neither worked really well.
Well, yes and no. So they brought quite a big upgrade package, and I was listening before the weekend to Ted Kravitz say, Aston are really excited for this upgrade package. It's going to be really, really sort of push them back up the field again, get the season going again, and it's just something has gone horribly wrong with that upgrade because it did not work well at all. I think in Friday practice, I think Alonso was at 18th, and they both were out they both qualified really badly for the race on Friday because they obviously didn't have enough time to test it. But it just didn't work. And I saw quite a funny meme of the upgrade, and it was the car, the back of the car twice, and saying but reversal, and saying it's completely failed. So they took the quite drastic step to for the race to both start them in the pit lane so they can make the changes. So I think Lance had the upgrade and Alonso had the Qatar spec of the car.
Yeah.
And although Alonso retired, Stroll did a good job from the pit lane to finish 7th, which is something we've not said often this season.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. Yeah,
fair play to him. So they did do a good job of climbing through the field, but yeah, just quite funny to see a much praised and hyped upgrade come in and just fail massively. I would probably not see an upgrade like that fail so badly for a while.
Yeah, no, the development's been weird, isn't it? Recent times.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, they're in the same boat as a lot of teams, same as Mercedes, probably same as Ferrari now, where they're just thinking about 2024 and using races to test different concepts and stuff is probably a reasonable way to do it. I mean, it's not cheap, but deep pockets, Lawrence Stroll.
Yeah, but then there must be an exercise going on. Be like, what's gone wrong with our season? We were challenging for podiums, and now we're really struggling.
Yeah.
And also, what's interesting is that McLaren started the season finishing the bottom in the constructors after the first 2 races. Looked at their car, looked at their upgrades that were coming, made those changes very quickly. Now the second quickest car. Aston have been in this sort of place, I'd say, since Barcelona, and that was summer, like pre-summer. They've been struggling for a while with their car, so it'd be interesting to see where they end up at the start of next season.
Yep.
Before we go to a break, I'll just quickly touch on William and Williams, because Logan Sargent managed to get his first points in because of the disqualifications. He managed to nip a point, which was great news for him. Must be nice for him to finally get some points just to help build his confidence. Although his pace was quite far off Albon, who I think he has to be the comparison, right? He has to be as close to Albon.
Yeah.
I saw a stat saying that Albon was closer to Verstappen than he was to his teammate by the end of the race.
Really? Wow, that is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm glad he's got a point.
Yeah, I think a decision on Sargent will come at the end of the final race, either before the final race or after it. Then that's when we'll see it. I just don't see James Vowles making a rash decision just yet. I think he's still giving him enough time, which I rate. He's giving him the full season. He's hoping he can turn it around, but hopefully that point gives him a bit of a confidence boost.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Hopefully a good confidence boost. I think Mexico, they've got a couple of good races as well, right? So Mexico and Brazil should be relatively good for Williams, I think, based on how the car's designed. No idea about Vegas, except there's quite a big straight, isn't there? Because there's the strip, etc.
A lot of straights, yeah.
So that it may well perform pretty well there too. So there's more opportunities there, I think. If you can take the confidence from the point gained at COTA and translate that into maybe a few more points over the course of the rest of the season, I'm sure he'll earn himself a seat for next year. But glad he's got that monkey off his back.
Yeah, and the rumour mill seems to be quite quiet at the moment. There's not much going on about him, so it's clear that Williams aren't actively doing anything about it at the moment, which is good. Right, we'll just take a quick break. Hello, welcome back from the break. Hope you had a jolly old time. In the break, Sam would just flag something to me, and he wants to give an honourable mention to a certain driver. So over to you, Sam.
Thanks, Will. I just wanted to give a shout out to Yuki Tsunoda. I've no doubt he doesn't listen to this podcast, but if you're a fan of Yuki Tsunoda, he's obviously a driver we haven't spoken about a huge amount because AlphaTauri have been, I'll say the word garbage. They've been garbage most of the year. The only interesting thing they've done is change their driver a few times and bring in a very fast Kiwi who we're very fond of or looking forward to seeing him in the sports soon. But no, Yuki had a really, really good race, really good pace, finished in 8th place in the end with the disqualifications as well, picked up some good points at AlphaTauri. And in that battle towards the bottom of the Constructors' Championship as well, that is very, very helpful for them. So yeah, let's have a look. So AlphaTauri are on 10 points now in 10th place. They're only 2 behind Haas and only 6 behind Alfa Romeo. There's a bit of a jump to Williams, who are up on 26 points in 7th place. I found it difficult to believe they'll beat them. But there's a chance there for AlphaTauri not to finish last. So yeah, that's good news. Good news for them. And yeah, great drive from Yuki. So just thought I'd get it in there.
Very good. Good to give the Yuki fans some love and give Yuki some love.
Indeed.
And we're now back to you for the results from the predictions game.
Yes, we are. Predictions time. It's an interesting one. It is an interesting one.
Okay.
So, Circuit of the Americas. If you're an uninitiated Formula One fan, if you just listen to us talk about COTA for the last 30 minutes without any explanation, that's what we're talking about, Circuit of the Americas near Austin, Texas. The results. First up, you had number 10, Lance Stroll. You predicted him to finish in 13th. He took a surprising 7th place and picked up some points. So you picked up 6 points for him. You had Esteban Ocon, number 12, who you predicted to finish in 12th. He DNF'd and was recorded as finished 18th, so you pick up 6 points for him. And you're very, very consistent this week, Will. You had Logan Sargent, 20, number 20, who you predicted to finish in 16th. He finished in 10th, earning his first point of the season, as we've just discussed. So you got a total of 18, sixes across the board.
Wow. I mean, that I should get a point. Or that's praise for getting consistency of 6s for all 3 of them.
Yeah, very good.
Shame it wasn't 0s.
Yeah.
How about you?
Not a great week for you. So I had Lando Norris, who I predicted to finish in 2nd place.
Oh, very good.
I had George Russell, who I predicted to finish in 5th place. So I'm 0-0.
Oh.
Here it comes. Is it happening? It's not happening. Sorry, sadly. I had Alex Albon and Williams, as we've discussed, had a very good weekend. I predicted him to finish in 14th, and he ended up 9th. So I pick up 5 points for a total of 5.
Oh, is that one of your lowest scores?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I don't know if it's exactly my lowest. I think we both had weeks where we've had like 4, maybe something like that. I'll have a look at some point. I'll do a full statistical analysis in December. But
we'll publish a full PowerPoint presentation on our social media.
Absolutely. So yes, no, good week for me. I've closed the gap by 13. Now, the gap was pretty big, whatever it was, and pretty big. Yeah. I haven't actually kept track because you've been so far ahead. I've just thought, why bother depressing myself every week? But now there's 13 knocked off of it, whatever it is. What I'll do is I will go back and have a look and tell you what the difference is after the Mexico Grand Prix when we've got 3 left to go.
Nice.
And we keep track of it a bit more closely.
That gives us we know what we're playing for when we've got 3 races to go.
Yes. So hopefully I can put some pressure on you. But yeah, no, nice to win a week. I haven't won a week for a while, I don't think.
No, you've not. So congratulations.
Thank you. Very good to be back. Max and I will have our winners podcast that you and he have had for the last God knows how long. Good. All right, should we do the predictions for Mexico then?
Yes.
Here we go. I'm going to load up the number randomizer. I quite like that we do this live now. It's quite good fun.
It's good. It has a good bit of jeopardy to it. I should say we've got a triple header because we've got Mexico, and then I think the following week we've got Brazil.
Yeah,
and then we've got a weird gap until I think it's a week's gap, and then we've got Vegas, which is actually quite helpful because the gap in between is when you and I are on a friend's stag do. So we will not have to follow the Formula One after having several beers. We can just drink several beers.
Yes, very good. You got first up number 6, which is Lando Norris.
I think he will finish Mexico in 2nd.
Okay. Number 9. Oh my goodness, you got both McLarens. It's Piastri.
Oh, Piastri. I think he'll finish 5th.
Oh, number 1. Max
Verstappen. Let me think about this.
Come on, DNF Max. This is it. This is the weekend.
I think he'll finish first.
Okay. Wow.
They always do quite well because it's high altitude, isn't it?
Yes, but Checo's home Grand Prix.
Yeah,
put Max into the dirt. Put him into the dirt.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that would be Checo means he will turn up. I think Checo will just be Checo.
Yeah. Oh man, mine started off really poorly. Lance Stroll, number 11, just got some points, didn't he? Aston Martin will probably stick with that upgrade. I'll go. But he's so rubbish. Sorry, Lance. Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to go 11th.
Okay, that's safe. That's safe.
Oh no. Okay, 7. Charles Leclerc.
Ooh, tricky one.
I actually have no clue. I mean, so will Ferrari be any good? Will their strategy team have a day off? I think I'm going to go 6th for Charles. And then I got 16. Yuki Tsunoda.
Oh, can he get more points? Are you backing him for another return to the points?
No.
Or do you think he'll go back on another 11th place finish spree? He's had so many 11th places this season.
He has, but I
think he must have like 5 or 6.
Finished right 11th. So
so then you're going to never point?
I'm gonna I don't think so. I'm gonna go close. I'm gonna go 12th.
Okay,
for Yuki.
nice.
That's tough. Okay, I'm not liking my chances next week, but here we go.
No, I think there might be another win for me. I don't want to call it, but that seems pretty ominous.
I mean, I need Max or Lando. If Max and Lando can take each other out into turn 1, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, you'd win then.
That'd be 19 plus what? 18-ish, 18, 19.
We need Checo to be like a bit of a pinball and just take out them both.
Oh, that'd be so good.
to get all three.
I'll try. What's the run down to turn 1 like in Mexico? Do you remember?
It's long. It's a long
Yeah.
straight, and then it's quite a tight right-hander. So it's a good. From the start of the straight to the end of it. It's a really long straight. And there's been some good battles there in the previous year, especially from the start. I mean, there was the year when I think Max qualified. I think Max was second or third, and Bottas was on pole. And Bottas just as he did in that key season, just left the door wide open, and Max was straight through. Didn't put up a fight, which was. I saw the replay of it on Sky the other day, and it made me angry. It's like I remember being so angry at the time when that happened because that was the one time you needed Bottas to do what Perez was doing to Hamilton and did to Hamilton, and Bottas just wasn't there. But anyway, that was
not a great starter, Bottas, famously.
No,
quite a good qualifier though. Weird, isn't it? So certain traits and certain drivers, strange.
Yeah, or if he qualified well, he could usually he won a lot of his races, I reckon, from pole. I'd like to think that, but he's now the forgotten man in Formula 1. Yet to get any talk at all, really, in our podcast.
No, I mean, I think the best thing he does now is just like
have mustaches,
have fun, mustaches, great helmets, great outfits. Give Lewis Hamilton pictures of him naked in lakes, like that kind of stuff. Just good crack at me, really.
That was a weird bit of time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Right. Thanks for joining us. That brings us to the end of the podcast. Remember to subscribe and leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. Excuse me. Carrying a bit of lurgy from my Belgian trip.
Is it still there?
Yeah, probably. If you enjoyed it, why don't you share the podcast with a friend? Hopefully they enjoy it as much as I have enjoyed all of the Texas-themed stuff and things from the race weekend just gone.
And on themed, do you think we'll get the return of the Mexican band version of the Formula 1 theme tune?
If they don't, immediate Latifi.
If you've not seen it, go check it out. It's amazing. It's so good. I mean, they should do more of them for around the world for where they can. But it's very good. I think they'll bring it back. I think it's too good not to bring back.
Yeah, I think they definitely should try and get the drivers wearing sombreros in the video as well, and just go all out.
But they used to give, I don't know if they've done this recently, but they did used to give, instead of caps on the podium, they used to give them sombreros, Pirelli themed sombreros. So I'd like a return to that. And especially Austin as well. They used to give them cowboy hats when we first went to COTA. So, bring back the sombreros.
Retweet. Speaking of, on Twitter, we are at Lights Out Lads, and on Instagram, we are at the Lights Out Pod. Will, why did the Mexican push his wife off of a cliff?
I don't know, but you're not going to get us cancelled, are you?
No. Tequila!
Oh, dearie me.
Yeah.
Well, I've got one. What do Mexicans put underneath their carpet?
Go on.
Underlay!
Very good.
There we go. We'll end on those two bad jokes. That's all from us. All the best, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.